Hello my friends. This evening it's a cold winter night and about a foot of snow outside. This is the time that I make wine from berries that I froze in the summer, and I'm making elderberry wine. I have here a bottle of elderberry wine that was bottled in 2011 and it's now 2016, so there's 5-year-old wine. I think if you make this wine, you might not be able to keep it that long before you open the bottle, but it does taste better as it ages. So to give you a close look at it, let's open it up. Boy, does that smell good. I don't think you're going to get any better than this one. Wow. Well, I'm going to share this recipe with you. Good luck on your wine venture. Here's 11 pounds of elderberries that are frozen. And then I'm going to take these off the stems.
It's January and near blizzard conditions outside. I'm warmed with the thought of walking through the woods and the fields in August, picking these berries. 2 days of picking at 2 different locations netted me approximately 35 pounds of berries. Once I pick them, I keep them in these bags and freeze them and store them until I'm ready to make my wine. This year's picking will generate 78 750 liter bottles. This is why I can have a 5-year-old wine.
These are organic lemons that I brought back from a friend of mine's organic farm in Fairhope, Alabama. And they're about the size of a small orange, and I keep them frozen. So we need 5 of these, 1 lemon for each gallon of wine that we're making. And what I'm going to do is leave the skin on one of them, and then I'm going to peel the other 4. If you leave the peel on all of them, it's going to have too strong of a lemon flavor and smell. But the one just gives enough hint that really gives it a good flavor, good taste. So we need to get these peels off. And being that they're still frozen, I can use a potato peeler on them. And the blender, we're going to use to chop everything up. We're going to put all the pulp goes into the batch, and that provides nutrients for the yeast when it's in there fermenting. We'll do all 4 of these and have them ready. And when we mix it up, we're going to put everything into this. It's a 6-gallon bucket, and wine came in this, wine juice, grape juice for making wine. And that's going to be our primary fermentation vessel. And we'll keep it in there for about 2 weeks. Then it'll go into a carboy, which is your glass bottle, and do the secondary fermentation in that. we need 16 pounds of sugar. So this is going to be the 16 pounds. Now I'm heating water up. You don't need to boil it, but water is boiling. You got to dissolve 16 pounds of sugar and get it mixed with the juice and the berries. So I'm using hot water to help dissolve the sugar. And while we're doing that, we're adding berries. And if you've got some stems in there, that's only going to add tannins, which will add flavor to the wine after it ages. That's what I'm looking for. Smells good.
Freezing the berries, whether it be elderberries, blueberries, or whatever, will help crack the cell structure in the berries and release the juices. So it's recommended to freeze these berries.
For all that hot water I added, that's ice cold. I have to let it warm up to about 70 degrees, and then I'm going to add the yeast. And I'm going to add 1 packet. Well, it does make a mess. And I'm leaving, looks like about 3 inches of headspace. This is going to foam as it's working. And it'll work for about 2 weeks, and then I will siphon off the liquid, put it in a carboy, and have it set for secondary fermentation. Here's the yeast I'm using. You want a fermenting or a wine or beer yeast. This is a champagne. And I want to mix this in. Now when this is fermenting, you're going to have this stuff floating the whole time in the primary fermentation. What you want to do is push this stuff that's on the top, push it under. A lot of times if it was grapes, it would be the grape skins floating. You want to push it under. That's what gives the color to the grapes, to the wine when it's finished. And the sugar, there may be sugar that's settling, and the yeast with its action will get it all dissolved.
This is after 1 day. You can see how there's a thick mass floating. This is mostly the skins and material from the lemons, any of the solids. Most of them are floating.
This should be a daily chore with your winemaking, that you push this must down below. If this were grape skins, this would be imparting more flavor and color into the solution. And the primary fermentation is anaerobic, meaning it needs oxygen for the feeding the yeast, for the yeast to survive. And then after you siphon this off and put it into a carboy, and then that secondary fermentation is then an anaerobic, meaning it ferments without oxygen. We just removed the must off the top. I just scooped it off. What's underneath, most of it is free-flowing. Most of the seeds are collecting at the bottom, and I'm pouring the free run off and filtering out most of the solids with a colander in the screen, and then we're going to transfer that.
Ready to serve. Visit quickly.com. Now at Home Depot, you can get 10% off appliances, $396 a month. So let's do better features for fewer cooks order, rinse cleaner.
All seeds. I'm going to save those, I'll dry them, and then in the spring I'll scatter them around my fence lines and around my pond.
After 1 week in the primary fermentation vessel, I separated the free-flowing juice into a bucket, and now I'm transferring from that bucket into my secondary fermentation vessel, which is a 5-gallon carboy. And I will keep a headspace down around the shoulder, the lower shoulder, just for more foaming action. You can see here the fermentation log. It's containing water in there. The water keeps oxygen from entering into the vessel, and it allows the carbon dioxide, which the yeast is forming, to escape.
When the bubbling slows up or stops, and you have a layer of sediment develop at the bottom of your carboy, it's time to rack the wine. So I'm going to rack this bottle. You see here I have an empty carboy and my siphon hose, and I have both of those sanitized. So now I'm going to do the racking. Okay, you need to tilt this carboy, and very gently I'm going to lean it and stick this block or wedge that I have underneath, and I have it leaning. And of course remove that. And I can see the sediment right in this level here, and I very gently tilted that so as not to disturb that sediment. And before I purchased this, I had a rod, either a dowel or a fiberglass rod with a rubber band holding the end of a vinyl hose on there, and I kept that end of the hose slightly above, maybe an inch or so above the bottom of the rod. With this, it has a cup, and that cup won't suck from the bottom, it'll suck from up here. So, and also what I do is I control the depth, at least at the initial part, where I hold this so it won't go all the way down into the carboy. And let's see if I can get that in there. Try not to disturb it too much. Okay, that's in. Now we do the siphoning. And you can see right there, it's working. We let that go, and we'll watch this part as it comes down.
As the level nears the bottom, pay close attention. Shift your siphon hose into the deep part of the pool. And that's what I just did here.
It's almost to the end. The back is already at the level of the bottom of the jar because it's leaning, and we're getting right to where it's going to gulp some air and break our siphon. And each time you rack, you're going to lose some of your volume, and with some of the berry wines like the elderberry, you can just add more juice that you used originally, or make up a sugar syrup and add that. Okay, I see it's sucking some solids. I'm going to break the vacuum, and that is the sediment, which is a lot of dead yeast cells and solid particles from the berries. And now we just clean the carboys. Let me recap the procedure that we just went through. First of all, starting with the recipe for the elderberry wine. We used 11 pounds of berries, 16 pounds of sugar, 5 lemons. One of the lemons you leave the rind on, and of course a package of yeast. And this is for 5 gallons of wine. If you're going to make a smaller batch, divide the recipe up accordingly. The smallest amount of wine that seems to be fairly successful is using 1 gallon. Getting much smaller than that, the ratio of the amount of air that will be in the top of the jar gets to be a higher percentage as you get to a smaller container. And that larger amount of air that's going to be trapped in the vessel can cause bad effects on the wine, cause wine spoilage, browning of the wine. So it's easier to work in a larger volume. That way you can keep the percentage of air at a minimal. When you're working with a berry and pulp, you want to do your primary fermentation in an open vessel. This will allow a lot of headspace for any of the foaming action, and you're going to have sediment in the bottom, and you're going to have a must in the top. When you do the primary fermentation, all your ingredients are mixed together, and you keep it at a room temperature for the yeast to be active and work. And you want to cover this with some type of a cloth. You need to have the oxygen in the beginning, but you want to keep out any of the gnats or fruit flies that would be possibly attracted to this. Fruit flies are attracted to alcohol, so any rotting fruit will be going through a fermentation process and creating an alcohol. In the life cycle of a fruit fly, they have to find alcohol. And what the alcohol does for the fruit fly is the fruit flies have a a parasite that will live inside them and kill them unless they find alcohol, and alcohol kills that parasite. So it's part of their life cycle. The problem with the fruit fly getting into any of your mix is they carry a vinegar bacteria on them, and that vinegar bacteria could spoil your wine. So keep this covered. If you're using a juice, you could put it directly into your fermentation vessel, the carboy, and for the primary portion, you can, where it's going to be maybe foaming, you want to keep the level down below the neck. And you could stop this up with a ball of cotton so that it will allow any of the gases to escape, but it would also keep the fruit flies from getting into the solution. Or you could go and put a fermentation lock directly onto the container and go right from there. And you leave this in the secondary fermentation vessel. This will be bubbling quite readily, and it'll show you that it's working. You have the CO2 escaping, and it's developing the alcohol. The primary fermentation, usually about 5 days to a week. You can let it go as much as 2 weeks. Tremendous amount of alcohol will be formed in that first initial onset. Then when it's transferred into the secondary fermentation vessel, you'll see it continue working. You'll see a lot of bubbles. When the bubble action slows down or stops, you'll find a sediment at the bottom, and what you do next is you want to rack the wine. The racking means it's a term used for siphoning off the liquid and leaving this bottom film, which will be solid particles from your juices or berries, and it would be dead yeast cells that are dropping out. So this first racking will be about a month after it's placed into here, and that will pretty much start clarifying the wine. A lot of the solids will be dropping out. Then you'll let it set maybe 2-3 more months and do a second rack, and possibly even a third after maybe 3 or so months following that. And then your wine should be real crisp looking, pretty clean. After the wine is completely done, you want to store that wine. You want to keep your wine about a year before you drink it, and that would impart a better flavor into the wine itself. After you're sure that it's completely done fermenting, then you could go and bottle the wine. I don't use any of the Camden or metabosulfite in there to kill the yeast. I don't want that into my wines. Racking the wine, it's a process of transferring the liquid off of the fermentation vessel and leaving the sediment at the bottom. So when you rack, you can use a vinyl tube to do this, a vinyl hose. And what I typically would do before I purchased any other equipment was I would attach this end of the hose onto a rod of some sort. I used to use a fiberglass rod. I'd fasten it with a rubber band at the bottom. And I would keep the end of the hose about an inch off the end of the rod. So I could stick this rod down. It would hold the tube close to the bottom, but it wouldn't be sucking the sediment off of the bottom of the bottle. And then you just draw a vacuum or a siphon and have your second vessel below that first one. This one will be tilted, and I support it with a wooden block, and that would allow, as the liquid's coming down, it would pull the liquid into one corner, that the corner that I'm having the siphon hose in. When you rack the wine, you're going to be losing some volume every time you rack the wine. Your secondary vessel, as it's done fermenting, you want to keep that jar right up to the neck, fill up to the neck. So after you rack, you want to add additional juice or add a syrup, which would be water plus sugar, at the same ratio as what your juice would be, and that would top that jar up and allow it to continue to ferment, but you'll have less sediment each time that you rack the wine and let it continue the fermentation process. You want to maintain minimum airspace. At this time, you want to keep the secondary fermentation void of oxygen. Oxygen in this development of the wine will be a hindrance to the outcome of the quality of what your wine will be. Too much oxygen is going to oxidate the wine. It's going to give it a brownish color. Keep the oxygen out by keeping this vessel completely full up through the neck, and keep your fermentation airlock on the top of it until you see all of the bubbling or fermentation action has ceased, and then you can place a solid stopper or cork on that and then let it age in this carboy until you're ready to either drink or bottle the wine. Thanks for watching, my friends. Bye-bye.